good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome back to another episode of I've watched almost every Humphrey Bogart movie. And so far, we have gone all the way down to 41 with the countdown. Today's episode will feature the list counting down further from 40 all the way to 31, finally breaking past the halfway point. Because right now, 40 is pretty much the halfway point. If you missed the previous episodes, we will have a short recap at the end just to fill everybody in on where we've gone from the beginning up till now. But without further delay, let's get into today's segment. So, starting off at 40, we have the movie Dark Victory. Now, this is actually a really good, solid film. It's considering how big the list is, 40 seems like it's kind of down the list versus how high it really should be as a movie itself. And the reason for that is that Bogart really isn't one of the predominant stars in this movie, but that's because there's so many other actors and actresses who are bigger roles in this movie. For example, Betty Davis puts on the performance of a lifetime in this, and it's really her movie. She basically plays a rich who socialite, yeah, who she likes to ride horses. She's very good at it. At one point she's riding and she experiences double vision because she's got something wrong in her brain, almost like a brain tumor that is causing her to experience some really serious horrible symptoms. Sometimes she gets a tremor in her arm, sometimes her other arm goes completely numb, the double vision, lots of headaches, all these things, which after getting seen by a bunch of different doctors and some specialists, they find out that it's a tumor. Now, they are able to remove it, but after, you know, scans and sort of testing the aftermath of the results, they find out that she's only got a short while to live and she will not be able to go on with the damage that has taken to her brain. Now, with the tumor gone, she will be able to experience a better, more normal life for that time up until the end when the symptoms will return and become worse. At first, she's kept in the dark and she thinks she's just miraculously healed because they don't want to ruin her time. Eventually, she finds out that she is doomed, and then she becomes very depressed. She gets drunk. She kind of lashes out at people. At one point, Bogart, who is her horse trainer, and her share a very passionate kiss in a tender moment, and that's probably the highlight of Bogart's scenes is that scene with her. And overall, it is a great movie. There's also Ronald Reagan playing a role in this one too, where he plays a drunk friend of Betty Davis's character, and he plays that very good. I'm like, well, it's kind of an easy role. He's just getting juiced the whole time, but he does a very good job at it. And overall, this movie is a solid performance, especially the way near the end when Betty Davis knows that the end is coming, she really tries to stand and be strong through it all, face it alone, and accept the inevitable fate of her demise that is about to come. Very beautiful, wonderful story, and yeah, it's a solid movie. It's just not really Bogart's big moment to shine, but if I was gonna say what's the best Betty Davis movie I've ever seen, I might be more inclined to put this up there as one of her best performances I've ever seen, 100%. So, all in all, that's why it falls in at 40. At 39, sorry, The Wagons Roll at Night. Now, this movie might seem a bit cheesy by today's standards and might have people who have seen this movie and have seen a lot of other Bogart movies wonder, like, why did he put that so high on the list? I think the redemption quality of Bogart's character as like this corrupt circus leader who's like running the show. He likes a girl. The girl ends up liking the new lion tamer who replaces the old juice tank of a lion tamer. And also his sister falls in love with him. They want to get married. So it's kind of like a Kid Galahad romance scenario, but it's all happening to Bogart instead of Edward G. Robinson. So I did notice there is that similarity in character scheme. However, the idea of like this crazy like circus and Bogart's the shady ringleader and there's a lion who basically does end up killing the former lion tamer. He injures other people and he's like a man killing lion. Like he's more aggressive than the other lions and he can't really be tamed as well. He's violent and aggressive. And of course, Bogart knows this and he's kind of trying to lead the new tamer because he's pissed off at him to go into the cage with the lion alone, thinking, oh, he's gonna finally get his for trying to take my sister away from the covenant and the nun sort of lifestyle, and then also making moves on my girl. So Bogart gets pissed off. He sends him in there with a gun, of course, in case things go well, but Bogart took the bullets out. So, when all hell breaks loose, the lion's about to kill this poor young lion tamer who was originally just a convenience store clerk. Like, he's really outside of his element to begin with, and he's trying to shoot the gun and it's empty. Course, Bogart's sister and the woman he did love, who was the fortune teller of the circus, basically convinced him, like, you can't do this. Like, the sister's like, I love him. You need to go in there and save him. So Bogart feels bad. He gets a gun. He goes in there. He manages to shoot the lion. But the gun gets knocked out of his hands. The tamer has to pick it up. Eventually, they do kill the lion. But Bogart gets mauled and clawed to death and dies, like, basically apologizing in his final moments. But the redemption arc of his character was beautiful. And I mean, it's pretty crazy that a lion actually tore Bogart's character apart in this movie. That's why I was like, oh, that's very entertaining. So overall, that's why I put The Wagons Roll at Night at 39 because I was really impressed with this movie as a whole. 38, we have Chain Lightning. Now, this is a really good movie as far as like a pilot movie. Of all the flying planes pilot style movies Bogart did, and he did a couple. This by far was my favorite, and I thought it was the best because he really is a hot shot pilot. He lost the love of his life because he had to move places during the war. They got separated. She ends up working for a secretary for another guy. He gets hired on as a test pilot. He's basically getting swayed by money and the higher up position because it gets him closer to the girl to basically fly this plane almost all around the world. And he manages to pull it off. It seems against all against all odds, but he manages to do it, which is incredible. But then his friend, who he kind of stabbed in the back at one point, was trying to design an ejection system for the plane that, in case of an emergency, the pilot's sort of cockpit of the plane would basically be injected as an entirety with the glass around it intact and a parachute would slowly land it down. Now, he tried to test it out himself and it failed. He didn't get the plane to the point where he could use the hydraulics to load it up and queue it up in time, so it malfunctioned and it didn't eject him in time. Now, the plane was failing, so this did not work for him. Now, Bogart, sort of as a redemptive quality, he feels bad. He betrayed his friend. He basically takes on this assignment into his own hands, and he goes up. And at first, they just wanted to test the speed, see how far this plane could go, see if there was anything worth salvaging with this plane. Bogart had other ideas, and they're trying to basically talk to him. He rips out the communication link because he gets fed up with hearing them order him to land because he's like, no, I'm going to finish what my friend started. He pushes the plane to its absolute maximum, goes as high as he can, goes as fast as he can, and The whole while, he's slowly queuing up the hydraulics for the eject pad. And when the time comes, he does eject properly. He lands safely in his cockpit, the glass all around it, the parachute, everything intact. And he sort of redeems his friend, which I thought was very noble. The overall story, the romance side, everything in this movie was very well done. I think it's definitely an underrated gem of Bogart's, and that's why Chain Lightning for me comes in at 38. Very solid effort. All right, next at 37, we have The Big Shot, which I was actually telling my friend Rich about this movie. This is one I have, and one that I really, at first, I kind of had the expectation that this was going to be a lot of like other Bogart gangster movies, but there was some really great character strengths. Now, here you had Bogart, a three timer, sort of getting out of jail. He was a crook, he robbed places. He really wanted to leave it behind, go straight, but they kind of lure him back in because he can't get a different job. They're riffing on him, giving him crap, like, because basically trying to serve him milk instead of beer, saying he's not a real man. So he gets roped back into this, and the guy pulling the job is a lawyer that basically took the woman that was Bogart's first love while he was in the camp. Now, they rekindle their romance. She basically talks him out of going through with this job and holds him at gunpoint to stop him because she wants to keep him out of jail. Of course, the robbery goes wrong. Some woman who's kind of bullied by the police because they just want to nail Bogart's character says that it's him. He wasn't there, so they need a new alibi. The lawyer, knowing that it's going to lead back to him, is kind of forced at first to hire this guy who's a car salesman to basically say, no, he was showing Bogart a car that night, and they work it out. Now, the kid wants to do it because he needs the money. He wants to get married to his girlfriend, all that. So, and he's a good, honest kid, not crooked at all, but he's just in a position where he could really use the money. Now, at first, everything seems good until the lawyer finds out that his dame was secretly going behind his back to be with Bogart. So then he basically tips off the prosecutor to bring in the car salesman's girlfriend for the alibi to basically say the alibi was bullshit. They both get locked up. They end up both going to jail. Eventually, Bogart tries to break out. He manages to escape, but during the process, the other guy trying to escape with him gets killed, also with a prison guard who gets shot. So they pin this on the car salesman who really didn't even have anything, but unknowingly assisted Bogart in getting some of the stuff to leave the prison because he became the warden's chauffeur and he didn't know what was really going on, that they had actually snuck a bundle of things Bogart would need to escape under the car. So he's going to get the electric chair if this prison guard dies and nobody else says otherwise that he wasn't involved. So Bogart, of course, his girl picks him up because the guy who was supposed to pick him up chickens out. They go, they escape near the border to Canada. They're up in the mountains, it's snowy. They're having a nice time. Very nice, beautiful, comfortable romance scene with these two here. And then the cops are coming, and eventually the radio's saying, like, they're gonna put this guy in the chair, and Bogart feels bad, so he feels like he needs to do something about it. So they're gonna go after the lawyer. But on the way, the police are chasing him. There's a shootout. And the woman, she gets shot, but she doesn't want Bogart to give up or get distracted in the pursuit. So she basically says, just drive faster. But she's dying. And by the time he actually does manage to outmaneuver the cops and get into a clearing, she dies, which breaks his heart because really all he really wanted to do was escape to be with her. He loved her, right? So he knows he could still make things right for the car salesman, goes after the lawyer, takes him out, gets shot in the process by the lawyer in self defense, but then confesses, I did it. He was behind all this all. So they have to let the car salesman go free and he's back in the hospital on his deathbed. Now, he's basically revisiting this story in his mind while the car salesman and his now wife are visiting him. He's having a cigarette. He basically tells him to get out of here. He knows that his end is coming. And as he's lying there thinking about how his life turned out, the cigarette falls from his hand and he dies. So very epic, beautiful story. I really like The Big Shot. Definitely, it goes beyond the normal gangster roles that we're used to seeing with Bogart, and it's just an incredible performance from everybody in this movie. So I really like The Big Shot. That's why number 37. Knock on Any Door. Now, 36, Knock on Any Door, is a very good movie. One I saw closer to the beginning of my journey, but I still remember it because Bogart played a lawyer who was trying to help this kid out through a lot of like different struggles throughout his life. He basically was supposed to help with his law firm, help the boy's father get out of jail. He had a heart attack. It really took a toll on the boy. He started resorting to bigger and bigger crimes. It messed up his life. So Bogart wanted to help him because he felt bad that the law firm, not him so much, but the law firm neglected his case. Now, he was kind of a juvenile delinquent when he was younger. He could sympathize. He wanted to get the kid off the wrong path onto the right path. So, when they think that this kid killed a cop in a robbery, he basically hires on him as a lawyer. He basically goes, he finds out all the information he can to try and develop his case. Now, the kid, his name is Nick, basically insists that the whole time he's innocent. And Bogart believes him. He really wants to believe him, right? So he's doing everything he can. He does actually build up a convincing case that this kid is innocent. But the prosecutor kind of knows that he is guilty. So he keeps pressing the kid and pressing the kid when he finally takes the stand and gets him to admit his guilt. Bogart, of course, he has some very iconic parts, like the one line that was in the Life in Flashes documentary where he says, "There are pinpoints of time that determine a man's destiny." Like it's a very great scene. But then, of course, knowing he's guilty, he gets up and he makes his final closing argument that it's because of the society, it's because of the corruption of the neighborhood, it's because we don't provide good opportunities to people who make one wrong mistake when they're young, and especially in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. It's really us that killed Nick. It's us that did it. And you could knock on any door in any place in this country and you might find a kid just like this kid. So eventually they're going to put Nick in the chair. Bogart says he's sorry and basically vows that, like, I'm sorry I couldn't save you, kid, but from now on, I'm going to make sure I can do whatever I can to make sure this doesn't happen to another kid like you. Because I really feel like it's partly my fault, and you really just didn't have the cards stacked in your favor. There's nothing I can do now for you, as much as I wish I could, but I'm not going to let that happen to somebody else. So, very, very good movie. Knock on Any Door, 100%. So, that's why 36 with that one. All right, that brings us to 35. They Drive by Night. Probably the best movie where Bogart and George Raft acted in together, especially because they were only in two, but they were cast as brothers. Very believable because they have a similar look to their appearance, both rugged looking. Now they play truck drivers. Basically, they go through this whole dramatic scenario where somebody tries to seize their truck. The one guy tries to go independent. One of the other drivers they knew and was friends with goes off the road, dies. They're trying to like get to a more stable living. Bogart, he goes through some stuff. He gets injured. He can't even drive for a while. So George Raft's kind of got to make his own moves on his own. Now he starts working for another guy. He's moving up in the chain of command, and the boss's wife above George Raft's character has a thing for him, but he's not interested. He's interested in a waitress that they picked up when he was still rolling with Bogart in the truck, and they've sort of got a thing going, right? So he really isn't interested in her. He wants to marry the waitress, but she's hell bent on having him, even though she's married to George Raft's boss. So she concocts this scheme to basically kill him while he's juiced by leaving the exhaust on. The boss's wife is played by Ida Lupina, by the way, and probably one of the greatest performances I've ever seen of her characters. It's so amazing, and Like, that's why she's a very well known, legendary, respectable actress and director. Like, she was so good in this role. So, yeah, she basically gets him in the garage. He's juiced, leaves the exhaust on, kills him, inherits everything, then basically approaches George Raft and says, look, I can't run the company by myself. I'm not knowledgeable about trucks. You are. Let's make it a 50-50 partnership. Now, believing that she really is being genuine about not knowing things, George Raft goes into it. Of course, slowly she's trying to make passes at him, sway him to become her new husband, but he's not having it because he still wants to marry the waitress. Bogart's arm recovers, he starts working for him, and then eventually Ida Lupina spills her guts and tells George Raft that she did all this because she wanted it. Reveals that she killed her husband. Now, he doesn't do anything about this because he thinks, oh, maybe she's just saying that because she's over emotional. But fearing that he might rat her out because he's not into her, she goes and tells the cops that it was him who planned this and made her do it to seize control of the company. So they're putting George Raft on trial. Now, while she's sort of being held as a material witness and an accomplice in the murder, she starts to go crazy. Everything starts triggering her. She has a complete mental breakdown on the stand. And that's why I say that performance alone was incredible from Ida Lupina. But then eventually she becomes, declared insane and held in contempt of court. So they let George Raft go and kind of decide like she really probably did do this on her own. And of course, he ends up marrying the waitress. He's about to leave and start over because he feels wrong that he built this company up as far as he did on something that was not honest and sort of disingenuine. It leaves him with a lack of integrity. But of course, the people, including Bogart, at the company are like, no, you can't quit. You're the heart and soul of this company now. You made us bigger than we ever were. And if you were to leave us here with this company, we're not going to know how to run it the same way you have. Like, don't let the bad opportunity take this away from you. And of course, he agrees. They get married. Everything ends well, except for Ida Lupina's character, who gets locked in the nut house. But fantastic movie. I really like They Drive by Night. Next, at 34, we have Angels with Dirty Faces. Probably the best one of the Dead End Kids movies. Now, Bogart plays a lawyer who basically was good friends with Cagney's character as a kid. He basically owes Cagney some money for taking a fall when he gets out. At first, he doesn't want to pay. So, Cagney has to resort to, going back to the street ways to get his money. He's basically bossing everybody around. His other friend ended up becoming a father. The father is played by Pat O'Brien, and very good chemistry. He eventually Cagney takes out the guys. The cops are after him. He's been giving money to the dead end kids and kind of leading them astray. The father's like, you can't be leading the kids. You're teaching them a bad way of life. Like your life, if that's how you want to live it, fine. I can't judge. We're friends still, but don't destroy other people's lives in the process. Of course, Cagney reluctantly agrees, but then the whole series where he has to take out Bogart's boss, take out Bogart, the cops hunt him down. They got him locked in a building, which has one of the greatest shootouts I've ever seen in old cinema movies. Like, as far as gangster movies, Cagney is holding them off. A one man army. It's like some Scarface shit, and it's great. But then they let Pat O'Brien go in to talk him down. They do get him. They lock him up. They're about to execute Cagney's character, put him in the chair, and he's kind of laughing. He's being sarcastic, like he's acting like a tough guy, like he really don't care. But then Pat, the father, basically goes and sees him and says, like, look, do this for the kids. If they see you walking out like you're a boss, they're gonna think there's no consequences. At least show them that, yeah, this is really real. And you're my friend. I know you might put on this tough guy act, but I know deep down you really are scared. You're just trying not to give them the satisfaction. But you're not giving them the satisfaction. You're depriving the understanding of the youth. So, Cagney agrees, basically balls, they kill him, but then the kids kind of learn, okay, crime really doesn't pay in the end. So yeah, Angels with Dirty Faces, solid movie, one I really liked for sure. And then at 33, we have Key Largo, which is the fourth of the movies with his fourth wife, Lauren Bacall. Edward G. Robinson's in it. The actress from Dead End, who was his girlfriend, plays a lush who struggles to sing, and she won an Academy Award for this performance because it's really painful to watch her struggle to sing, but very sad, and it's this very deep, intense scene. And Edward G. Robinson just steals the show in this movie. Like he is the most ruthless bad guy as Johnny Rocco. Incredible performance. And at first, Bogart really is playing the background in this movie. He's a military commander who basically was good friends with Lauren Bacall's former husband, who died in the war, but he hasn't been honest about the circumstances regarding the war. He basically tells the boy's father, played by Lionel Barrymore and Lauren Bacall, that uh he did his best, he fought, but he has sort of the reverse circumstances of everything when really he was the one who was the brave one who had to stand on his own at one point, and that the husband actually died trying to save him. So, you actually find out how great Bogart's character really is not until the very end of the movie. There's a hurricane blowing. This movie was directed by John Huston, by the way, and some of the best Bogart movies were directed by John Huston, which is why this one was so good. The hurricane shakes everything up. There's these native aboriginals. They basically get into a skirmish with the sheriff, thinking that they're the ones who killed the cop when it was Edward G's boys. It leads to a shoot down with them. They were innocent. And then Bogart basically is getting forced to take the Edward G and his boys back to Cuba. Now, while they're out there in the fog on the water, Bogart basically slowly takes them all out, takes out Edward G, gets shot in the process, but manages to drive the boat back to Lauren Bacall after telling them that he was all right. And you can kind of see that there is already a romance starting to flourish between Bacall's character and Bogart when they have this deep conversation about like you can't deny who you are. It's who you are. You're a soldier. You're brave. You got to stand up for what's right. And even though their romance isn't at the forefront, it's a nice kind of icing on the cake that you know when he's driving the boat back, which ironically, the boat is called the Santana. That's named after Bogart's boat in real life because he really liked to go sailing. He actually won several boat races. So that's kind of a cool thing. But him on the Santana coming back, you know he's going to get the girl. You know he stopped Edward G. He kind of redeemed himself. He proved he was the badass soldier. He still was in the war even now. And that's why Key Largo, very good movie. I watched it several times. I really liked it. Next, we have at 32, the second last one of today's countdown, Marked Woman. Now, Marked Woman has a lot of great actresses in it. Betty Davis is in this one, and Mayo Metho, who was actually Bogart's third wife, and they had met on the set of making this movie. Now, this is another one of those, ooh, Betty Davis really put on a great performance. And Bogart didn't have the most memorable role, but his role was crucial to the story, and he effectively tackled it well because he also played a prosecutor trying to go after the gangsters who were the owners of the club Betty Davis and Mayo Metho worked at. So there ends up a situation where Betty Davis's sister gets killed in the skirmish by the gangsters doing things. She basically tries to get everybody to stand up for what's right, rat them all out. And at first, Bogart tries to help her even before the death of the sister. And she basically bails on him because they pay her off not to say anything at the last moment. Which Bogart's angry. He feels betrayed. Like he's just going to keep doing more and more of this stuff if you women don't stand up and tell the truth to take him down, right? He really wants this guy bad. But there's just not enough hard evidence against him. So, because of that, he's really angry. But then after the death of her sister, Betty Davis goes to see him again and basically says, like, okay, we need to take this guy down. Like, this time, I'm really all in. And I know you don't trust me. I know you don't have to believe me. But just know I'm not doing it for my sister. And even if my own life is at stake now, I'm doing this for her. So she does it for her sister. Of course, as she starts to go to trial, the gangster gets mad, carves a mark on her face, scars her face, so she can't work anywhere anymore as sort of a hostess in one of these clubs. And then the other women feel really bad. They eventually try to kill the one girl who was there when the sister died. She basically gets chased away, manages to make it back to the girls, sees Betty Davis and the other girls in the hospital. Eventually, they all have this touching scene where they agree they all need to band together to stand up to this guy because otherwise, he's just going to kill them all. He's not going to be stopped and he's just going to be worse. In which case, Bogart brings all the hard evidence and knocks this guy right off his pedestal, which is great. And of course, there's one memorable scene where he's questioning his future wife, Mayo Metho, on the stand. And that, because there's not really many scenes where they had any sort of chemistry, but you could tell the mannerisms, the body language when they're interacting in that scene, that there was already some sort of form of romance going on. And it's really beautiful to see because it's sort of life imitating art, art imitating life. So, that's what ties in at 32, Marked Woman. For the last one of today's countdown, Sahara 31. It is a war movie where they're out in the Sahara Desert. It's during the war. They basically end up in a survival where they've got to for water as well as survive, like the Germans who are coming to attack them. There's British, American, they've all kind of teamed up. They've got other people from the local countries helping him. They've captured a German who's a real prick. He pretends like he can't speak English, but really he can. He sets up this Italian guy, kills him, basically gets killed in the skirmish and all this, so he doesn't reveal what he knows. They basically hold the Germans off and basically blackball them that if you guys surrender, we'll give you all the water you want. And if not, then no dice. And the Germans really try to keep fighting them, and it's this survival of desperation, of dehydration and war. And Bogart commanding all of them as like the superior officer is really phenomenal in this role. Like he really takes charge. He really is a boss. He's a memorable character. One of the other guys barely survives, almost dehydrates, and passes out in the sand right before he makes it to the Allies to try and get them to bring reinforcements. But the Allies do find him. They come and save Bogart's bacon right at the last moment. But at this point, the Germans are so damn thirsty, they say, fuck it, just give us the water. We don't want to fight anymore. You already killed our boss. Like, shit, we're not all gonna die for nothing. Like, if we keep fighting you, we're gonna die anyway even if we win, because you guys could just drink all the water before we kill you and take it. So they end up winning in two ways. And overall, Sahara, as far as a war movie, this was definitely one of my favorite ones that Bogart was in because he really took charge. The story was good. And overall, all the actors, even the supporting ones, put on an amazing performance. So, yeah, that's why Sahara falls in at 31. And that concludes the countdown for today. Now, for our quick recap, before we conclude today's episode, I will take you through where we've gone all the way up till now. So at 80, we have the TV version of The Petrified Forest, the staged play adaptation live. At 79, we have You Murderer, the Tales from the Crypt episode with archive footage. At 78, we have The Love Lottery with an uncredited cameo from Bogart. At 77, we have Two Guys from Milwaukee, which has him and Lauren Bacall in uncredited cameos as well. At 76, we have Women of All Nations, who Bogart did act in originally, but all his scenes were deleted from the final cut. At 75, we have Body and Soul, which I have not seen because it seems like there's no DVD or downloadable version available. If anybody does have a way to watch this, please let me know in the comments because I'd still really love to see it one day if it's possible. At 74, A Devil with Women. Same thing pretty much, although I have heard stories that a film reel exists of this at some museum. I'm not sure which, but if that's true, really wish I could go there and watch it just so that would be another Bogart movie under my belt. At 73, we have Always Together, where he plays a small cameo of a father crying through a window on the television. It's available on DVD. I still don't have it and have not seen it as of yet, but hopefully someday I will. At 72, the start of all the ones I've seen and can actually speak on, we have Midnight, which is also known as Call It Murder when it was re released after Bogart became a bigger star. At 71, we have A Holy Terror. At 69, we have The Return of Dr. X. At at 70, we have Swing. Okay, because I did 71, A Holy Terror. At 70, we have Swing Your Lady. At 69, we have The Return of Dr. X. At 68, we have Love Affair. At 67, we have Men Are Such Fools. At 66, we have Thank Your Lucky Stars. At 65, we have Bad Sister. At 64, we have Two Against the World. At 63, we have Up the River. At 62, we have Big City Blues. At 61, we have Three on a Match. At 60, we have Virginia City. At 59, we have Isle of Fury. At 58, we have Racket Busters. At 57, we have Crime School. At 56, we have Action in the North Atlantic. At 55, we have China Clipper. At 54, we have San Quentin. At 53, we have Across the Pacific. At 52, we have Dead End. At 51, we have Brother Orchard. At 50, we have The Oklahoma Kid. At 49, we have Invisible Stripes. 48, You Can't Get Away with Murder. 47, The Great O'Malley. 46, King of the Underworld. 45, Stand It. 44, Kid Galahad. 43, It All Came True. 42, Battle Circus. 41, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse. And starting with a review of today's countdown, at 40, we had Dark Victory. At 39, The Wagons Roll at Night. At 38, Chain Lightning. 37, The Big Shot. 36, Knock on Any Door. 35, They Drive by Night. 30, no, that was 35, They Drive by Night. 34, Angels with Dirty Faces. 33, Key Largo. 32, Marked Woman. And 31, the conclusion of today's episode, Sahara. So, I'll try to be mindful of everybody's time and not take too long with my closing. But thanks everybody for watching so far. I hope if you've not seen the previous episodes, you will go back and watch them. Eventually, when the series is concluded, I will put them all into a playlist so that they're organized and you could watch them in order. But please also stay tuned for tomorrow's episode when we will count down from 30 to 21. We've now cracked past the halfway point, and we only have really 30 more movies to go, which will be great. Now we are heading into the superb and excellent territory, meaning that after that, the best of the best is coming. So please stay tuned, and until next time, Oyasumi Nasai, Matane, peace out, and here's looking at you, kid.